My parents invited me to a family celebration. But when I arrived, they told me there wasn't a seat for me. My sister smirked. Only immediate family gets a spot. I nodded and walked out. The next day, they showed up at my door begging. My name is Alex, and I come from a family where the dynamics have always been a bit complicated. My parents, John and Mary, have always had a soft spot for my younger sister, Lily, who could do no wrong in their eyes. Growing up, I often felt like the black sheep, the one who didn't quite fit into the family mold. My brother Mark was the golden child, excelling in sports and academics, while I was more of the quiet, introspective type. Despite these differences, we managed to maintain a semblance of family unity, or so I thought. The story I'm about to tell you began with an invitation to a family celebration. It was supposed to be a joyous occasion, a gathering to celebrate my parents' 30th wedding anniversary. The invitation was sent via a group text, with my parents gushing about how they wanted all their children to be there to share in their special day. But as I prepared for the event, a nagging feeling of unease settled in my stomach. It wasn't just the usual family tension. There was something else, something unspoken that hung in the air like a thick fog. I remember standing in front of my closet, trying to decide what to wear. The choice of attire felt strangely significant, as if the fabric I chose could somehow shield me from the undercurrents of tension I sensed. I settled on a simple yet elegant outfit, hoping it would convey the right balance of respect and detachment. The drive to my parents' house was filled with a mix of nostalgia and dread. Memories of past family gatherings flashed through my mind. Laughs, arguments, and those moments where the facade of unity would crack, revealing the day of the celebration arrived, and I dressed in my best attire, a crisp navy suit that I had bought for such occasions. I arrived at my parents' sprawling suburban home, the same house where I grew up, now decorated with balloons and streamers. The driveway was packed with cars, indicating a full house. As I walked up the path, I could hear laughter and chatter from inside. I rang the doorbell, and my mother, Mary, opened the door with a wide smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Alex, you made it," she exclaimed, but her greeting felt rehearsed. I stepped inside, greeted by the familiar scent of my mother's cooking. The living room was bustling with relatives, cousins, aunts, and uncles. I spotted Lily, looking radiant in a floral dress, chatting animatedly with our cousins. Mark was there too, his arm around his fiancée, looking every bit the proud son. Mingled, trying to shake off the feeling of being an outsider. But then, as dinner was announced, I noticed something odd. There were no extra chairs set out for me. Why was there no seat for me at my own family's celebration? I glanced around, hoping to catch someone's eye, perhaps to signal my confusion. But everyone seemed absorbed in their own conversations, oblivious to my predicament. My father, John, was at the head of the table, carving the roast with a practiced hand, his laughter booming over the din. I approached my mother, who was busy adjusting the centerpiece. "Mom, where should I sit?" I asked, keeping my voice low. She paused, her eyes darting around the room before meeting mine. "Oh, Alex." As everyone began to take their seats, I stood awkwardly by the side, waiting for someone to notice. My father, John, was busy directing people to their places. When he finally looked up and saw me, his expression changed to one of confusion, then annoyance. "Alex, there's no seat for you," he said, his voice loud enough for others to hear. A hush fell over the room. Lily, with a smirk that could only be described as triumphant, added, "Only immediate family gets a spot." I felt the sting of her words like a slap. Immediate family? Was I not part of that anymore? I nodded, not trusting my voice, and turned to leave. The room was silent as I walked out, the door closing softly behind me. The next day, I was still reeling from the rejection when there was a knock at my door. It was my parents, looking disheveled and desperate. "Alex, we need to talk," my mother said, her voice quivering. I opened the door wider, allowing them in, but the air was thick with tension. My father, usually so composed, looked like he hadn't slept. My mother's eyes were red, as if she'd been crying. "We owe you an apology," my father began, his voice strained. "Last night it was wrong of us to treat you that way." My mother nodded, her hands wringing together. "We didn't realize how it would look, how it would feel to you. We've been so caught up in the celebration, in making everything perfect, that we lost sight of what really matters." I stood there, processing, their words, the hurt still fresh. "Why did you do it?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "It was Lily," my mother admitted, her gaze dropping to the floor. "She convinced us that with the limited space, only the immediate family should be at the table. We thought you'd understand." "And Mark?" I pressed, feeling the sting of betrayal from my own brother. "He didn't know," my father interjected. "He was as surprised as you were when he saw there was no seat for you. My parents sat on my couch, looking out of place in my small, modern apartment. "We need your help," my father began, his voice strained. "The celebration. It was more expensive than we anticipated. We're short on funds." I was stunned. "You're asking me for money? After what happened yesterday?" Mary's eyes filled with tears, but they weren't tears of remorse. "We thought you'd understand. You've always been the one to help out when needed." I felt a surge of anger. "And what about the way you've treated me? The favoritism, the exclusion?" They had no answer, just a look of expectation. When I refused to help, they left, but not before my mother whispered, "You'll regret this." I watched them go, the door clicking shut with a finality that echoed in the silence of my apartment. My mind raced with possibilities. What would they do next? Would they turn to Lily, their golden child, for financial support? Or perhaps Mark, who was always the reliable one, would step in? The thought of them going to Lily made my stomach churn. She had orchestrated the whole seating debacle at the celebration, her smirk as I was left standing without a chair still burned into my memory. I could almost hear her now, convincing my parents that I was the problem, not her. I paced my living room, the anger giving way to a cold realization. They had always been blind to her manipulations, her subtle ways of pushing me out. And now, with their backs against the wall financially, would they finally see her for who she was? Or would they continue to see her through the rose-tinted glasses of parental favoritism? My phone buzzed, breaking my train of thought. It was a text from Mark. "Hey, Alex. I heard about what happened. I'm sorry I didn't notice sooner. Can we talk?" I stared at the message, my finger hovering over the screen. Mark was different. He had always tried to bridge the gap between us, even if he was often caught in Lily's web of influence. I typed back, "Sure, let's meet up." The next morning, my phone was buzzing with notifications. Social media was ablaze with posts from my parents, painting me as the ungrateful child who refused to help in their time of need. Comments from relatives and friends flooded in, some condemning me, others questioning the situation. I couldn't take it anymore. The injustice of it all, the manipulation, it was too much. I decided to fight back. I posted my side of the story, detailing years of being sidelined, the favoritism towards Lily and Mark, and the recent humiliation at the celebration. I didn't hold back. I let out everything, the pain, the frustration, the years of feeling, like an outsider in my own family. The response was immediate. Some relatives reached out in support, their messages filled with shock and sympathy. Others, who had perhaps seen the cracks in our family's facade, expressed their understanding. My parents' posts began to disappear as the truth came to light, their narrative crumbling under the weight of my revelations. I watched as the online battlefield shifted, Friends who had once been silent now voiced their support. "Alex, we had—" "No idea," one cousin wrote. "I'm so sorry for what you've been through." But amidst the support, there was backlash too. Lily's friends, ever loyal, defended her, accusing me of twisting the truth. "You're just jealous," one of them commented. "Lily has always been the kindest person I know." The digital war raged on, but I felt a strange sense of liberation. By speaking out, I had broken the chains of silence that had bound me for so long. Yet, as I scrolled through the comments, a question lingered in my mind. Would this be the end of our family as I knew it? The thought was both terrifying and oddly freeing. I had always been the peacemaker, the one to keep the peace at any cost, but now the cost seemed too high. My parents, once the pillars of our family, now seemed like strangers, their actions so at odds with the love they claimed to have for all their children. As the day wore on, the online storm began to settle. My phone, which in the days that followed, my parents went silent. No calls, no texts, no attempts at reconciliation. The family group chat was eerily quiet. I felt a mix of relief and sadness. I had exposed the truth, but at what cost? The family I once knew was fractured, perhaps beyond repair. Yet, in this silence, I found a strange peace. I was no longer the outsider. I had stood up for myself, and in doing so, I had reclaimed my narrative. Was I too harsh? Or was this long overdue? The silence from my family was my answer. I had made my choice, and now I was ready to move forward, with or without them. I spent those days reflecting on my childhood, on the countless times I felt overlooked or dismissed. The memories were a mix of laughter and tears, of feeling like I was part of something bigger, yet always on the periphery. I remembered the time when I had won an award for my writing, a moment of pride that was quickly overshadowed by Lily's latest achievement, or the countless family dinners where my accomplishments were met with a nod while Lily's were celebrated with cheers. The silence from my parents was deafening, but it was also a canvas for my own thoughts. I started to write, pouring out my feelings, my frustrations, and my hopes for the future. Writing had always been my escape, my way to process the world around me. Now, it became my therapy. I also began to reach out to those who had supported me online. Their messages of solidarity and understanding were like lifelines, pulling me out of the isolation I had felt for so long. We planned meetups, virtual at first, where I shared more about my journey, about the dynamics of my family, and how I was navigating this new chapter of my life. Mark, true to his word, met up with me. Over coffee, he apologized for his part in the family's dynamics, for not seeing sooner how I was treated. "I was so caught up in my own world, Alex," he said, his voice heavy with regret. "I should have been there for you more." His words meant more than he could know. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment if you enjoyed this story. This will help us create more engaging stories for you.